The police cruiser rolled into my driveway before I even turned off the engine. Blue lights washed across my windshield. Not frantic, not chaotic, just steady, controlled, like whoever made that call already thought they'd won. I sat there for half a second with the keys still in my hand, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. The air smelled like hot asphalt, fresh-cut grass, and trouble. Then I saw her, Linda Whitmore, standing on the sidewalk like she owned the entire neighborhood. Arms folded, chin lifted, perfect posture, perfect smile. The kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. She was already talking to the officers before I even opened my door. That was my first clue. This wasn't confusion. This was a setup. I stepped out slowly. Gravel crunched under my shoes. One of the officers turned toward me. Calm. Professional. Hand near his belt. Not because he was scared. Because he was being careful. "Sir," he said, "we got a call about a trespasser." A trespasser. The word just hung there. Heavy. Wrong. I glanced past him. My house sat right behind me. Same porch. Same mailbox. Same chipped white railing I still hadn't gotten around to fixing. Same front door. Same driveway. Same key in my pocket. But somehow, I didn't belong there anymore. "That's him," Linda said. Soft voice. Clean delivery. Like she'd practiced it. A couple doors opened down the street. Then another. Curtains shifted. Phones came out. Nobody said a word. They were waiting. That was when I understood what she was really doing. This wasn't about safety. This wasn't about neighborhood standards. This was public theater. And Linda expected the ending to go her way. The officer took a step closer. "Do you live here, sir?" I let that question sit for a beat. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because I wanted to hear how insane it sounded out loud. "Yeah," I said. Simple. No extra words. That should have ended it. It didn't. Linda tilted her head and smiled tighter. "He's been coming and going all week," she said. "No HOA record. No approval." Then she gave them the line she'd clearly been waiting to say. "We have standards here." Standards. She said it like that word outranked ownership. Like an HOA file meant more than a front door key. Like paperwork mattered more than reality. I slipped my hand into my pocket and touched my key fob. Cold metal. Familiar weight. Real. The same one I'd used almost every day for months. The officer's radio crackled once. Then went quiet. Linda didn't flinch. Not even a little. That was my second clue. Because people who are unsure hesitate. People who are wrong get defensive. But Linda? Linda looked ready. I looked back at the officer. "You sure this is about trespassing?" I asked. He hesitated. Just a flicker. But it was there. His eyes shifted to Linda, then back to me. And right then, before anyone said another word, I knew two things. First, this wasn't random. Second, Linda Whitmore had just made a very public, very expensive mistake. I watched the officer's eyes move between me and Linda like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't fit. His hand stayed near his belt, relaxed but ready. The second officer took a slow step to the side, giving himself a better angle on both of us. That tiny movement told me more than either of them had said so far. They weren't convinced. Not yet. Linda noticed it too. Her smile tightened. Just a little. Like control was starting to slip through her fingers, and she was trying to pull it back. "We have rules here," she said again, louder this time. "Everyone has to register. Background checks. Approval." He skipped all of that. Her voice carried across the lawns. It was meant to. A few more doors opened. Someone coughed. A dog barked once, then stopped. Even the dog could feel the tension. I kept my shoulders loose. Hands visible. Posture calm. I learned a long time ago that calm makes people uncomfortable when they expect panic. The first officer nodded slowly. "Do you have identification, sir?" I did. Of course I did. But I didn't reach for it right away. Not yet. There was something about the way Linda was watching me. Too focused. Too confident. Like she thought she already knew how this would end. That was the part that bothered me. I glanced toward my front porch. The package I'd left there that morning was still sitting by the door. Untouched. My name was printed clearly across the label. Small detail. Easy to miss. But it mattered. "You said I've been coming and going all week?" I asked, looking directly at Linda. She nodded immediately. Too fast. Multiple times. Late hours. Suspicious activity. Suspicious. Another loaded word. Dropped casually. Meant to stick. The officer's pen hovered over his notepad. Now he was listening carefully. That was new. Linda took a step forward. Not aggressive, just enough to claim space. This community does not tolerate that kind of behavior, she said. Her tone had changed. Less polite, more certain, like she was building a case in real time and expecting the officers to follow her lead. That was when I realized something else. She wasn't trying to clarify anything. She was trying to control the whole scene. I reached into my pocket slowly and pulled out my wallet. The leather creaked softly in my hand. I flipped it open just enough to show my driver's license. My name. My address. Clear as day. The officer leaned in. His eyes scanned it. Then he looked up at me. There was a pause. Longer this time. The second officer shifted his weight. His radio let out a brief burst of static, then went quiet again. Linda's smile flickered. Just for a second. Almost invisible. But I caught it. That doesn't prove anything, she said quickly. Anyone can print an address. That line landed badly. Too defensive. Too eager. The first officer glanced back at her. His expression changed. Not much. Just a subtle tightening around the eyes. Doubt. Finally. I slid my wallet shut, but didn't put it away. Not yet. Linda crossed her arms again. Her nails tapped lightly against her sleeve. Soft. Fast. Impatient. She was waiting for them to act. To remove me. To make her right. But nobody moved. The silence stretched. Not empty. Charged. Then I felt it. A vibration in my pocket. My phone. Short pulses. Steady. Deliberate. I ignored it. For the moment. But Linda noticed. Her eyes dropped for half. A second, then snapped back up. That tiny reaction caught my attention. Like she knew that call might matter. I looked at her more carefully. The confidence was still there. But underneath it, something else had started to show. Urgency. A need for this to go her way right now, before anything changed. That was the moment I realized it. Linda didn't just want control. She needed this moment to hold. The phone kept vibrating in my pocket. Short pulses. Steady. Insistent. Like something on the other end was trying to punch through the scene. I still didn't reach for it. Not yet. The first officer cleared his throat. Small sound, but it shifted the air. Ma'am, he said, turning toward Linda. Do you have any documentation from the HOA showing this property is restricted? That question landed hard. Linda blinked once. Too slow. Of course we do, she said quickly. All properties here are governed under association rules. Governed. Another word she liked. Heavy. Official. Clean. But she didn't hand him anything. And that mattered. The second officer noticed too. His pen tapped once against the notebook. Quiet. Deliberate. I glanced at the street. More neighbors now. A man in a polo shirt stood by his mailbox pretending to check something that wasn't there. A woman held her phone at chest level, angled just enough to record. This was no longer a private conversation. It had become a spectacle. Exactly what Linda wanted. Or had wanted. She straightened her posture. He is avoiding the process, she added. We've had issues with unregistered occupants before. Unregistered occupants. The phrase echoed strangely. Like she'd used it before. More than once. The officer looked at my license again. Then at the house. Then back at me. How long have you lived here? He asked. Simple question. Direct. I took a slow breath. A few months, I said. Truth. Clean. No extra detail. Linda shook her head immediately. Too fast again. That's not accurate, she said. We have no record of him. No record. That was her anchor. Her whole version of reality rested on one belief. If it wasn't in her files, it didn't exist. That was the mistake. My phone vibrated. Again. Longer this time. I moved my hand toward my pocket. Then stopped. The second officer noticed. His eyes followed the motion. You can take that call if you need to, he said. Calm. Almost casual. But there was curiosity in it now. I nodded once. Still didn't answer. Linda's eyes flicked to my pocket again. Then back to my face. Her smile was gone now. Not completely. But thinner. Controlled. This is not about a phone call, she said. This is about maintaining order in the community. Order. Another word she leaned on. But it sounded weaker now. Less convincing. The officer shifted his stance. His shoulders relaxed slightly. That was new. He wasn't preparing to remove me anymore. He was observing. Linda took another step forward. If you allow this, she said, gesturing toward me, you're setting a precedent. That line wasn't for the police. It was for the crowd. For the neighbors. For the cameras. For the little audience she thought she controlled. She was trying to win the room. My phone vibrated again. This time I pulled it out. Slowly, the screen lit up in my hand. A name flashed across it. I didn't react. Not outwardly. But something inside me clicked into place. The pieces were starting to line up. I let it ring for one more second. Then another. The officer's eyes dropped to the screen. He couldn't see the name, but he could tell it mattered. Linda could too. She was watching too closely now. Too invested. Whatever that call represented. She did not want me answering it. That was clear. I tilted the phone slightly. Sunlight caught the glass and bounced back into my eyes. I exhaled once. Quiet. Measured. Then I looked at Linda again. And for the first time since this started, I saw it clearly. She was not in control anymore. She just didn't know it yet. I let the call fade out. The screen dimmed slowly in my hand. No voicemail alert. No random spam number. No confusion. Just silence. That told me enough. Whoever was calling expected me to answer. And they were going to call again. The first officer watched me carefully. Not suspicious anymore. Curious. That shift was small. But it mattered. Linda saw it. Too. Her fingers tightened against her sleeve. The tapping stopped. "Are we done here?" she asked. Her voice was sharper now. The polite tone was gone. "Because this situation is very clear." Clear? She kept using that word. Like repeating it would make it true. The officer didn't answer right away. He looked back at my house again. The porch. The package. The address. The details. They were stacking up now. Quietly. One by one. "Sir," he said to me, "do you have anything else that shows you reside here?" I did. Plenty. Utility bills. Records. More than enough. But I didn't reach for them. Because this wasn't really about where I lived anymore. It was about something else. Something Linda had pushed too far. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Slow. Deliberate. Linda's eyes tracked the movement again. That same tension. She wanted control back. And she was losing it. "He should not be here," she said, louder now. "This is a private community." The words echoed across the street. A few heads turned. Someone whispered. The second officer shifted again. More relaxed now. Less defensive. "Ma'am," he said, "we're just trying to verify the situation." Verify. Not enforce. Not remove. Not trespass. Not arrest. Verify. That one word changed everything. Linda's jaw tightened. She didn't like that word. It meant delay. It meant doubt. It meant she wasn't getting instant compliance. The air felt heavier now. Warmer. The sun had dipped just enough to cast longer shadows across the driveway. Mine stretched toward the officers. Linda's fell sharply behind her. Hard not to notice. My phone buzzed again. Louder. Longer. Persistent. I pulled it out. Same name. Same number. Not random. Not harmless. I angled the screen slightly away. But the first officer still caught a glimpse. Not the name. Just the format. A direct line. Corporate. He noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly. Different attention now. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded once. "Yeah." Simple. Then I looked at Linda again. Really looked at her. Her posture was still upright. Still composed. But her breathing had changed. Slightly faster. Barely visible. Unless you were paying attention. She stepped closer. Just one step. Enough to reclaim space. "You're making this more complicated then." "It needs to be," she said. Lower voice now. Less for the crowd. More for the officers. "We have procedures." Procedures. Rules. Standards. Order. She kept cycling through the same words like one of them would finally save her. But none of them answered the one thing she couldn't explain. Why she had been so certain. So early. So prepared. The officer glanced between us. Then down at my phone. Still lit. Still ringing. He tilted his head. "You might want to take that." This time there was something else in his tone. Not just suggestion. Expectation. I let it ring one more second. Then I answered. I didn't step away. Didn't turn my back. Didn't lower my voice. I stayed right there in front of all of them. "This is Ethan," I said. Steady. Flat. Controlled. The person on the other end spoke immediately. Fast. Professional. Measured. I listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. But something in what they said made the corner of my mouth tighten, just slightly. Not a smile. Not yet. Just recognition. I ended the call without another word. Slid the phone back into my pocket. Then I looked up. The street felt different now. Quieter. Like something had shifted underneath all of it. Linda was watching me too closely now. waiting for me to slip, waiting for me to explain, waiting for me to lose control. I held her gaze for a second longer than before. Then I spoke, not to her, to the officer. You might want to check something, I said. He frowned slightly. Check what? I glanced once toward the street, toward the houses, toward the little audience Linda had gathered, then back at him, her husband's employer. Linda's expression froze, just for a second, but that was all it took. The air went still the second those words landed. Not loud, not dramatic, just sharp enough to cut through everything else. The first officer blinked once. Slow, like he was replaying what he'd just heard. Her husband's employer? He repeated. Now his tone was different, less routine, more careful. Linda didn't speak right away. That was new. Her silence stretched one beat too long. Then she laughed. Short, sharp, controlled. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, she said, but her voice had lost something. A thin edge of uncertainty slipped through. The second officer glanced at her, then back at me. He wasn't just listening now. He was measuring reactions. I kept my posture exactly the same. Calm, neutral, still. The kind of stillness that makes other people fill the space. Linda stepped forward again, closer than before. Her perfume hit stronger this time. Expensive, sharp, artificial. This is irrelevant, she said. We're dealing with a trespass issue. Trespass. She was trying to drag the story back to where she could control it, but it was drifting. I could feel that. The first officer nodded slowly, but he didn't move toward me. He looked at Linda instead. Ma'am, can you explain what he means? Simple question. Direct. Linda's lips pressed together, just for a second. Then she forced the smile back into place. My husband works in finance, she said. Private sector. That has nothing to do with this. Finance. Vague. Safe. Too safe. The officer tilted his head. Which company? That question landed heavier than the last. Linda hesitated. Just a fraction. But it was there. The neighbors felt it too. The quiet changed. Phone steadied. Whispers stopped halfway through. She opened her mouth, closed it, then answered. Whitmore Holdings. Clear. Confident. But it came a beat too late. I watched the first officer's face. Subtle reaction, but real. His eyebrows moved slightly. Recognition. Not full recognition, but enough. The second officer glanced at his partner, then back at me. That look carried a question neither of them said out loud. I didn't answer it. Not yet. Linda crossed her arms again. Defensive now. Like I said, she continued, this has nothing to do with, actually. The first officer cut in gently. It might. That interruption changed the entire tone. Linda froze. Not visibly, but you could feel it. The control she'd been clutching was slipping, piece by piece. The officer turned back to me. Sir, do you mind clarifying? Polite, but focused. The kind of focus that doesn't let go once it locks in. I let a second pass. Then another. Not to build drama. Just to make sure every eye on that street was locked on. The same moment, I slipped my hands into my pockets. Casual. Controlled. Whitmore Holdings, I said slowly, isn't just where her husband works. I paused. Not long. Just enough. The second officer leaned in slightly. The first officer didn't move at all. It's where I make decisions. No raised voice. No smile. No performance. Just a fact. The words settled into the space between us. No one reacted immediately. That was the interesting part. It took a second to register. Then another. The first officer's posture changed first. Straightened slightly. Professional instincts adjusting. The second officer's pin stopped moving. Linda's face didn't change right away, but her eyes did. That confidence drained just enough to notice, like a crack forming under the surface. That's not possible, she said quickly. Too quickly. The denial came before the thought. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The silence was doing more work than words ever could. The officer looked at her, then at me, then down at his notebook. He didn't write anything. Not yet. The air felt tighter now. Not confusion anymore. Recognition. Linda took one small step back, almost invisible, but it broke her forward momentum. And for the first time since this started, she looked unsure of what came next. No one spoke for a full second. Then another. The kind of silence that makes every tiny sound feel louder. A car door slammed somewhere down the street. Far away. Not part of this moment. But it still carried. The first officer squared his shoulders. Sir, he said, slower this time. Can you clarify your role with Whitmore Holdings? I didn't rush the answer. I let the moment settle. Let them feel it. Linda's eyes stayed locked on me. Not confident anymore. Searching. Trying to read the next move. I oversee operations, I said. Simple. Not the full truth. But enough. The second officer exchanged a quick glance with his partner. They both heard what I meant. That wasn't employee language. That wasn't middle management. That was something higher. Linda shook her head immediately. Too fast again. That doesn't mean anything, she said. Lots of people say things like that. Her voice had lost its smooth edge now. There was strain in it. Tight. Controlled. Trying to recover ground. The first officer didn't even look at her this time. He kept his eyes on me. Do you have anything that confirms that? I nodded slightly, then paused. Not because I needed time. Because I wanted to choose exactly how this moved forward. My phone buzzed again. Short. Sharp. Insistent. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Same contact. Again. That told me everything. They were watching this unfold in real time, or close enough. I declined the call and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Linda noticed. Of course she did. Her eyes dropped and came back up faster now. Less controlled. You're avoiding the question, she said. If you have proof, show it. There it was. Pressure. Direct. She needed me to react. To prove it. Or fail trying. But she was rushing now. And rushing meant she felt the shift. The first officer raised one hand slightly. Not to stop her. Just to slow her down. Ma'am, he said, calm but firm. Let him answer. That tone was new. Authority. Real authority. Not HOA authority. Not neighborhood authority. Actual authority. Linda stopped talking. But her jaw stayed tight. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. Different pocket. Slower movement. Deliberate. I pulled out a thin card holder. Black. Simple. No logo on the outside. I opened it halfway. Then stopped. The second officer leaned in just a little. Interested now. The first officer stayed still. Waiting. That mattered. I slid one card out and held it between my fingers. Didn't hand it over yet. Just looked at it for a second. White card. Clean print. Minimal design. The kind of card that doesn't try to impress. Because it doesn't have to. Linda leaned forward without realizing she'd done it. Just a fraction. Her eyes fixed on the card. Like it might explain everything. Or destroy it. I lifted my eyes back to the officer. Before I hand this over, I said, I want to be clear about something. My voice stayed level. No threat. No edge. Just clarity. The street tightened around that sentence. Even the neighbors had stopped shifting. Phones were steady now. Waiting. The officer nodded once. Go ahead. I glanced briefly at Linda. Not long. Just enough. Her shoulders were slightly raised now. Breathing shallow. Control gone. Replaced by something else. Anticipation. I looked back at the officer. This situation started as a misunderstanding, I said. I let that land. Then I added, but it's about to become something else. That line hit harder than anything I'd said so far. Not louder. Just cleaner. More precise. The officer's expression tightened slightly. Not in resistance. In recognition. He understood enough. Maybe not all of it, but enough. Linda didn't interrupt this time. She just watched. And for the first time, she looked like she wasn't sure she wanted to see what came next. I handed the card over. No rush. No flourish. Just a clean, simple motion. The officer took it carefully, like he didn't want to bend it. His eyes dropped to the print. The change was immediate. Subtle, but unmistakable. His posture straightened another inch. The second officer leaned closer to read over his shoulder. Neither of them spoke. That silence said more than any reaction could have. Linda stepped forward again. Instinct. She needed to see it. What does it say? She asked. Her voice was tighter now. Less polished. Less sure. The officer didn't answer her. He kept his eyes on the card for one more second. Then he looked up at me. Different now. Fully engaged. Mr. Caldwell, he said, using my name for the first time. You're the chief executive officer? He didn't say it loudly. He didn't need to. The words carried anyway. Across the driveway. Across the lawns. Into every phone still recording. Linda froze. Completely this time. No movement. No correction. No recovery. Just stillness. I didn't nod right away. I let the moment sit. Then I gave him one small nod. Nothing dramatic. Just confirmation. The second officer exhaled quietly, almost under his breath. The kind of reaction you can't fake. Linda shook her head slowly. Not denial. Not yet. More like her mind was trying to catch up. That doesn't make sense, she said. The sentence broke in the middle. That was new. The officer handed the card back to me with more care than before. Respect had entered the exchange. Not exaggerated. Just present. Real. Sir, he said, I apologize for the confusion. Confusion. That word replaced trespass. Replaced suspicion. Replaced everything Linda had tried to build. She stepped forward again, but this time it looked different. Not controlled. Not strategic. Reactive. There has to be some mistake, she said. David would have told me. David. She said his name without thinking. That detail hung in the air. The officers heard it. So did I. I slipped the card back into the holder and closed it with a soft click. The sound carried. Small. Final. Linda's breathing had changed again. Faster. Less steady. She looked at the officers, then at me, then down at the ground for a split second before lifting her chin again, trying to recover something. Anything. Even if that's true, she said, it doesn't change the fact that he violated HOA policy. Policy. She went back to it. Her last anchor. But it sounded hollow now. Thin. Desperate. Empty. The first officer nodded slowly. Not agreeing. Just acknowledging that she'd spoken. Then he looked at me again. Sir, he said, do you want to pursue anything regarding the call? That question landed heavier than anything before. Not because of the words. Because of what they meant. This was no longer me defending myself. It was about whether I chose to act. Linda heard that too. Her shoulders dropped just slightly. The control was gone now. Replaced by something quieter. Uncertainty. I didn't answer right away. I looked past them. At the neighbors. At the phones. At the quiet street that had turned into a stage. Then back at Linda. She held my gaze. Not defiant. Not powerful. Not smug. Just waiting. And for the first time since this started, she looked like she understood what was really happening. This was no longer her scene. It had moved somewhere she couldn't reach. I let out a slow breath. The warm air carried the smell of cut grass again. Ordinary. Calm. Like nothing had happened. But everything had. I shifted my weight. Gravel pressed beneath my shoe. A small reminder of exactly where I stood. Then I looked back at the officer. And I made a decision that would change how this ended. I shook my head once. No, simple. Clear. Done. The first officer's posture eased slightly. Not fully relaxed. Just no longer braced for escalation. The second officer made a quick note in his book. Efficient. Like the whole situation had already shifted categories in his mind. Linda blinked. Confused. That wasn't the ending she expected. You're just going to let this go? She asked. Her voice came out sharper than she meant it to. Control slipped again. I didn't answer her immediately. I turned and looked at my front porch. The package was still there. My name was still printed across the label. Untouched. Unquestioned. Obvious. That detail said everything. I looked back at her. This was a misunderstanding, I said. Same words as before, but heavier now. Linda's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue. Nothing came out. The officer stepped back half a step, not separating us, just resetting the scene. Ma'am, he said calmly, based on what we have verified, there is no trespass here. Verified. That word landed clean. Final. Linda's shoulders dropped just a fraction. Not surrender, but close. But the HOA, she started. The officer raised a hand gently. Not rude. Not dismissive. Firm. HOA policies do not override property rights. That ended it. Around us, the tension broke quietly. A door closed. A phone lowered. A curtain shifted back into place. The audience dissolved the way it always does. Fast. Once there's nothing left to watch. Linda stood still for a second longer. Then she looked at me again. Not with authority. Not with that rehearsed smile. Just trying to understand how it slipped. How it turned. How she lost the room. I slipped my hands back into my pockets. Calm. Nothing about me had changed. That was the point. She had built this entire performance on one assumption. And it had collapsed. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it this time. Completely. That part didn't matter anymore. Not out here. The officer gave me a small nod. Professional. Respectful. Then he turned slightly toward Linda. I would advise handling any future concerns through proper channels, he said. Advice. Not a warning. But close enough. Linda nodded. Automatically. Reflex. Her eyes dropped to the pavement for a split second, then lifted again. The expression on her face was different now. Not broken, but quieter. Like something had shifted inside her that she couldn't immediately fix. The officers turned and walked back toward their cruiser. Slowly. No urgency. No tension. The sound of their boots faded quickly against the pavement. The blue lights dimmed, then disappeared. I stood there for a second, listening as the normal sounds came back. Whine through the trees. A car in the distance. A sprinkler turning on somewhere nearby. Ordinary again. Linda remained on the sidewalk. Not moving. Not speaking. Just standing there. Processing. I stepped past her without a word. Close enough to catch the faint scent of her perfume again. It didn't smell sharp anymore. Just distant. Like the moment had already moved past her. I walked up the short path to my front door. The wood creaked under my hand as I reached for the handle. Familiar. Grounded. Real. Behind me, I could feel her still standing there. Not following. Not leaving. Just trying to catch up to what had already happened. I picked up the package from the porch. The cardboard was warm from the sun. My name stared back at me in clean black letters. Simple proof. Always there. Always enough. I paused for a second before opening the door. Not because I needed to. Because I already knew something else had started moving beyond this street. And Linda was only just beginning to realize it. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The house felt cool. Quiet. Like it had been waiting for the noise to pass. The latch clicked shut with a soft final sound. That ended the scene outside. But not the situation. Not even close. I set the package down on the kitchen counter. Dull cardboard against stone. Ordinary. Grounding. My phone vibrated again. I picked it up this time. Same contact. Third call. I answered. Ethan. No greeting. No extra words. The voice on the other end got straight to it. Calm. Direct. Professional. We saw the report. Do you want us to proceed? I leaned one hand against the counter. Cool surface under my palm. I looked out. Through the window toward the street. The cruiser was gone. The neighbors had disappeared. Only one figure remained. Linda. Still standing there. Not moving much. Just enough to show she hadn't left. Not yet, I said. The voice on the other end paused. Then came the answer. Understood. Clean. Efficient. No wasted words. That's how things work at that level. I ended the call and set the phone face down on the counter. Silence returned. I stood there for a second and let everything settle. The quiet felt different now. Not empty. Controlled. Outside, Linda finally moved. Slow steps. Not toward my door. Not fully away either. Just pacing a short line on the sidewalk. Thinking. Trying to piece it together. I knew that pattern. I'd seen it before. Not in neighborhoods. In boardrooms. When someone makes a move before understanding the full picture. I picked up the package and sliced the tape open. Soft rip. Clean split. Inside were documents. Neat. Organized. Routine. Nothing dramatic. But the timing made perfect sense. It always does. I set them aside. Then my phone lit up again. Not a call this time. A message. Short. Internal. David Whitmore flagged for review. I read it once. Then again. No emotion attached. Just information. The process had already started. Quietly. Exactly the way it should. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Outside, Linda stopped pacing. She pulled out her phone. Looked at the screen. Then slowly looked back toward my house. That moment stretched. I could almost see the realization forming. Not complete yet, but close. I walked back toward the front door and opened it halfway. Warm air rolled in again. The same smell of grass. The same asphalt. The same quiet street. That was the strange part. Everything looked exactly the same. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Linda looked up when the door opened. Our eyes met. No words. No gestures. No performance left. Just a quiet understanding passing between us. She knew something had shifted. She just didn't know how far it went. Not yet. I stepped back inside and closed the door again. The latch clicked softly. Final. I walked back to the counter and picked up my phone. Another message had come in. Even. Shorter than the last. You just got the call. I stared at the screen for a second. Then I locked it. Set it down. No reaction. No smile. No speech. No victory lap. Because this part never happens out loud. It happens in offices. In closed-door conversations. In forwarded emails. In calls no one records. The kind that actually matter. I poured myself a glass of water. Took one slow sip. Cool. Clean. Steady. Outside, a car passed. Normal traffic. Life moving on. But somewhere else, in a very different room, a very different conversation had just begun. And this time, Linda was not the one controlling it.